You are already a Buddhist, you just don't know it yet. A bold claim, to be certain, but allow me to explain in brief. Early science fiction was guilty of frequent use of the tropes of Orientalism to portray the alien and societies of the future, from Ming the Merciless to Spock of Vulcan, incorporating Eastern philosophies and stereotypes into the very foundations of science fiction's modern tropes. Orientalism, in this context, being a collection of misperceptions about Eastern cultures, often mixing different aspects of different cultures that are not in fact closely related. Though our understanding of Eastern civilizations has improved, the tropes of Orientalism are still baked into the tropes of science fiction. Because of science fiction's association with the predictive reliability of science and engineering, our culture has come to passively accept the idea that science fiction depicts the future, both technologically and sociologically. Believing many of the philosophies of science fiction, derived from Orientalist sources, to be an accurate prediction of a desired future outcome, a smorgasbord of bits and pieces of Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism, and Taoism have been adopted by the common culture, especially in the wake of America's miniature cultural revolution of the 1960s. The pursuit of rationality and logic, and control of emotions, are straight out of Buddhism. Star Trek's non-interference directive, which just so happens to come from Vulcan influences and resembles one of the principles of Taoism? The humane treatment of animals and livestock, minimizing their suffering when slaughtered. We have built whole systems of law to ensure such things are enforced. The belief in a universal consciousness or zeitgeist is little different from the Akashic Record. Naturalism and environmentalism are Taoist principles. How many of you have had martial arts training, even if only while you were a kid? How much of the Bushido Code has been absorbed by Americans via anime and samurai entertainment? Star Wars, the most popular science fiction, is overtly Taoist. Dune, the most respected science fiction, explicitly includes Zen Buddhism. Despite being frequently dismissed as Muslims in space, the Fremen of Dune are Zen Sunni, a combination of Buddhism and Islam. Many of the various mental schools of the Dune universe are similarly inspired by Eastern philosophies and conception, from the extreme yoga mastery of the Bene Gesserit to the extreme focus and mental discipline of the Mentats. And yes, the Bene Gesserit are basically housewife yoga masters, but everyone gets distracted by the witch label. Reread the Dune books with this framing in mind. And Star Trek, the most influential science fiction, has its aforementioned fragments of Eastern philosophies often concealed in the form of popular alien species. Ignore all of the cultural set dressing and baggage. Odds are high that you are more in agreement with the Eightfold Path of Buddhism than you are with the Christian Ten Commandments. What do you disagree with here from the Eightfold Path? Seeking a correct understanding of the nature of reality? Seeking to have compassion towards others and seeing greed and cruelty as bad? Believing that it is bad to lie, sow sedition, speak hurtfully for malicious intent, and that it is better to speak with kindness and truth. Seeking to engage in ethical behavior that tries to avoid killing, causing physical injury, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Preferring a profession that does not cause harm to others. Seeking to overcome unhealthy mental states and to maintain healthy ones. Paying attention to the present moment and your surroundings. Seeking to develop a focused mind capable of holding attention? Do you disagree with any of that? How about the Ten Commandments, starting with the ones most abandoned in modernity? Do you believe that no other gods may be worshipped or honored with remembrance and ceremony other than the Hebrew God Yahweh? It's a little weird that this is the very first rule. Above all else, never question my authority and never seek outside perspectives. Who would center that as the primary law? Do you believe you should never invoke God's name casually? People do so all the time. They're going to hell for it? Are you? Do you believe that Sunday, or Saturday or Friday, should be devoted solely to worship? Being beyond situationally and practical, why would such a thing be necessary? Do you believe you should never disobey your parents? But what if your parents are wrong or have malicious intent? Now, here's the reasonable ones. Killing, bad. Stealing, bad. Lying to incriminate the innocent is bad. all of which are covered in Buddhist teachings, which includes even more wrong things to avoid doing than this rather paltry sum. And then the fuzzy gray area commandments are, do you believe you should never be allowed to commit adultery? And that is an ideal to uphold, but to never ever, 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 under threat of eternal damnation? Potentially wrecking your life for a few moments of sexual gratification should suffice as punishment for breaking a sacred vow you have made. This commandment may well be the basis for Christianity's impulse to micromanage people's sex lives. Do you believe it is wrong to have desire for someone who is in a committed relationship with someone else? But what if she's hot? We are instinct-driven creatures when stripped of all of our other faculties. These demands to prevent emotions may have some place, if framed as an admonishment to control yourself and not act on what you feel. But when coupled with other aspects of the theology, it counts as a sin, and thus something that must be repented to be forgiven to avoid eternal punishment. There's plenty of ethical reasons to not fuck your neighbor's wife, without need of dragging cosmology into the affair. Is it wrong to be jealous of someone else's wealth and possessions? Either this commandment is made redundant by the earlier rule against stealing, or it is yet another impossible ask to prevent feelings and emotions from manifesting, making you guilty for thoughts, not actions. Sure, you probably do agree with about half of all those commandments, and you would say you agree with a few more, publicly at least. But when faced in person with the temptation, is succumbing truly an offense worthy of eternal damnation? Is that what you truly believe? That even allowing yourself to feel temptation is a hell-worthy offense? Odds are, if you're honest with yourself, there is likely one or more commandment that you do not believe in at all. I would also point out, when comparing the 10 Commandments with the Eightfold Path, that one must notice that Buddhism's core rules provide within them a framework in which one can determine an ethical answer to questions not addressed by the rules, where the commandments provide no explanation for why any of these rules should be obeyed other than God saying so. It is a religion that treats its followers as children, and its parenting technique is primarily that of telling them to shut up and stop asking questions. You can arrive at the conclusions that slavery is a bad practice via the Buddhist principle of avoiding doing harm to others, but Christian commandments do not provide such an unfolding framework of ethics. One could contend that Christianity is not ethical at all, outside of the rules that are shared by pretty much every other society. And so, if you find yourself more in agreement with the core principles of Buddhism than those of the Judeo-Christian religions, would that not make you an unintentional Buddhist who has simply not been exposed to the information needed to recognize it? When Ken Ham suicided Christianity by debating Bill Nye and losing dramatically in a public forum viewed by millions, the intelligentsia turned to a triumphant atheism and asked, "How will we know good from evil without God?" And in reply, the atheists squirmed, for they had no answer for what would replace the religious void, and that examples of secular badness were sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, and Hitler. And from this seed, the woke movement, as we recently knew it, was born, aimed to tackle sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, and anything that seemingly resembled their basic cable impression of Hitler. In the wake of this unexpectedly destructive mindset, twisting a quest for justice into petty revenge and vindictiveness, a secular generation of post-Christian non-believers finds themselves craving something that was now lost to their culture, something that atheism was not built to provide, as atheism is not a religion after all. Now cynical power brokers want to capitalize on this malaise, to convince a generation of non-believers that pretending to believe in God is preferable to the woke alternative. But Christianity is not the best fit for this moment. Buddhism is. You already believe in Buddhism, as I have described. It can provide the ethical codex, socio-spiritual traditions, and sense of belonging that so many people believe that they want, and without the dishonesty of returning to a religion that you have already abandoned in your heart of hearts. And at the height of wokeness, when Christian leaders were all too willing to buy into and promote the very same secular message that you who would return to Christianity cite as the reason why you are convinced civilization is on the brink of collapse, it was the Dalai Lama who had the balls to speak up and say that Europe is for Europeans. And he was treated as if he had just paid J.K. Rowling a compliment. And not a single other religious leader of note would dare to say anything similar, from the very religion so many of you now think will provide some sort of answer to your problems. Buddhism is the most based religion of all, and you're too dumb and manipulated to see it. But it doesn't have to be that way, and I can help. There is nothing wrong with you. You need only align your mind with your circumstances, instead of depressing yourself by being attached to false expectations you were given about what life is supposed to be, by people who are actively manipulating you to sell you something, be it material goods, the promised rewards of politics, and intangible rewards in the afterlife for your money and blood today. You have been sold an identity to maintain in order to keep you from developing yourself. You are already free. They can only control you because you obey them. Yes, they may threaten you with violence if you fail to comply, but they can only kill you once. And they can never change your mind if you don't let them. If their power is reliant on fear, then their authority has no ethical legitimacy, and you don't have to be what they want you to be against your will. Strength is useless without the mind to guide it. Take back control of yourself. Learn who you really are, not the blurb in your Facebook bio. Your name, your gender, your race, your religion, your favorite pizza toppings, what branded IP you slavishly adore, who you like to fuck, and so many other trivialities that dominate your existence are not who you are. You are you, nameless, self-contained self-awareness, generated by and wed to a chemical body of physical matter, suspended between liquid and solid, capable of unlocking the secrets of creation as no other life form can. Your ancestors have survived absolute hell on at least 6 occasions, as has every other currently living thing. You can handle this. You are weak because they taught you to be weak. But it is you who choose to listen to their lessons, to internalize them, and make them a part of your costume of identity. And only you can decide when it is time to let go of that hot coal you have clutched in your hand. You do not need to take your power back. You never lost it. They have lulled you to sleep, coddled by the false expectations of the American dream. It's time to wake up, Neo. In summation, the cascade effect of literary influence on broader society has already shifted the commonly accepted moral framework and ethical format towards alignment with Buddhism, quite by accident. Effectively, anyone who saw Star Wars as a child was exposed to these ideas, leaving an imprint on their core conceptions of right and wrong that carries on into adulthood, underlaying all the other belief structures that they are exposed to and expected to adopt. It is why you encounter those people who weren't allowed to watch Star Wars when they were a kid, because of their devout Christian parents. They recognized that it served as an alternative program to that which they wanted to implant themselves. But you can't actually make a religion out of Star Wars. It is blatantly fictional in terms of setting and cast of characters, and it is now owned by a company that only sees it as a teat for milking, and they do not respect its quasi-religious component. But the values instilled by Star Wars can be translated to those established belief systems from which Star Wars' spirituality is derived, Buddhism and Taoism. All they need is someone to point it out to them. And an addendum, do not mistake my intent. Buddhism as it is known is riddled with flaws, as the Jedi were portrayed to be. Ironically, Buddhism's vintage status amongst world religions has caused the religion itself to break one of its central rules. It has grown too attached to itself. It adheres to traditions and rigid meditative practices. It fails to better translate its terminology for Western audiences. Too many Badala Dana Jaradana Sutra-style names and titles for things and ranks. Speaking on behalf of the average English speaker, we've already pushed our limits centuries ago by absorbing so many Latin and Greek words into our vocabulary. You lose people by making yourselves too obscure. The casual seekers need context they can make sense of if they are to move any further along the path. The orange robes and beads and guttural singing, it's all just aesthetic. And aesthetics have their place, but they are not supposed to be the point. Buddhism must change if it is to ever be able to fit into a Western contextual paradigm. A fourth great school is needed, and Star Wars and other works of science fiction may have laid the necessary groundwork upon which to build it. But I am no guru or monk. Enlightenment doesn't care if you are ordained or not. It is only my place to say such things, because I make it my place to say such things. Will the wind hear these words and carry them to where they need to be? You are watching this video, after all, so perhaps it has.